the Tuesday, oh wait, the Tuesday voter guide, right? It's actually Sunday still, but on November 8th, we'll be voting. And who should we be voting for? Well, here on Sunday the 6th, I'm going to tell you who to vote for on Tuesday the 8th. No, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. That's really not what we should be doing. I mean, everybody's trying to tell you who to vote for. I'm just going to tell you about the issues and the rundowns on these local Pennsylvania candidates and a few other elections and just how I see them. And then you should take that with your other information and from other sources, and you should do your own research. I don't know if any of you have argued with anybody lately on the internet, but particularly anybody who's been fed some kind of weird Kool-Aid, the cult members, uh, they will tell you when you start asking where they're getting something to, quote, do your own research. And of course, that's code for they don't actually know why they're saying what they're saying. Uh, Something on the internet they heard, or one of their friends told them, or they watched something, or they did a cursory read of something. You know, I had somebody trying to tell me today that the United States is one of the only countries, along with the Ukraine, to vote down this anti-Nazi rhetoric, or this anti-Nazi resolution, I'm sorry, from the Soviet Union and the UN. Oh, I'm sorry, from Russia and the UN. Uh, the reason the US voted it down, quite simply, if this person had done their research, is two reasons. Number one is US sees it as a thinly veiled excuse from Russia to harass a certain other Western European countries that they don't like. But mainly, number two, the resolution would call on countries to pass laws which would restrict the ability of people to say anything they wanted about Nazis, good or bad, right? At least good in this case. It runs afoul of the United States First Amendment. So I guess this person who was trying to point this out to me wants me to say, oh, well, of course we should vote for something that runs afoul of the First Amendment. Why we should just, unfortunately in our country, or fortunately, people can have whatever views they want. So if Doug Mastriano wants to go out there and say that a woman should have no right to an abortion, even in the case of rape or incest or her life, that's his right, right? And if he wants to say that Jews will not replace us or whatever other thing he likes to say or has never said, but the guy who owns Gab, who's a buddy of his, likes to say, the guy who owns Gab can say that sort of stuff, right? Do we support it? I don't. I think some of you do, right? But anti-Semitism, we're seeing that more and more. We've got two of the three Ks for the KKK, right? We got Kyrie and we got Kanye telling us, making anti-Semitic comments. We've got that coming. Louis Farrakhan, who's been running this Nation of Islam for years, has been openly anti-Semitic. We have anti-Semites in the Republican Party. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene and people like our own Doug Mastriano attending rallies and places where they talk about the evils. Now they'll say, oh no, I love Israel more than most Jews. Notice how they say that, right? But anyhow, let's get down to my voter guide and some spins. We're going to stay tuned for that. First, because I have breaking news, right? Last night, Donald Trump nicknamed Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious. So we're starting to see the first schism, open schism between Trump and DeSantis. And for those of you in the MAGA universe who love Donald Trump and love Ron DeSantis, will you take a side? Is he DeSanctimonious? Is he worthy of a nickname like Little Marco, Pocahontas, as the president was taking to calling Elizabeth Warren? Ron DeSantis is now in that nickname category. He's like Lion Ted Cruz. Are you okay with that? I don't know. It's interesting, right? Because that's your backup guy. But maybe it's okay to name call. Maybe it's okay if you don't really mean it, or maybe he really means it. I'm waiting to find out. Now, let's go back to my spin on the elections. We'll start here with Oz versus Fetterman. First of all, I voted for Oz in the primary, okay? He was my choice because Donald Trump told me to vote for him. So I went ahead and followed Donald on his lead on that one. And why did I follow Donald's lead? Because I know that Oz is actually kind of a moderate. He is a carpetbagger from New Jersey. He's a highly educated doctor, right? He's not woke, but he's certainly not some wacky right-wing kook either. He's got a good education. He's a doctor. He's from New Jersey. He used to be against abortion. He used to be against guns, so we can pretty much rely on him to be a pretty moderate Republican when push comes to shove once he's elected and gets his 6-year term, if in fact that's what he gets. Fetterman, on the other hand, is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat. He is a man of the people, however. He's uneducated, working kind of guy, but not really working. But Fetterman also is not lockstep with all things Democratic either. Is he a liberal radical who wants to burn down the country? Absolutely not. Just like Oz is not a wacky conservative. So if you have to choose between Oz or Fetterman, you might want to decide, do you want Democratic control of the Senate or Republican control of the Senate? Well, if the Republicans control the Senate, we'll get one series of things out of them. If the Democrats control the Senate, we'll get another series of things out of it. So I would suggest that the vote between Fetterman or Oz may come down to, quite simply, who do you want to control the Senate? Because they're really not radically different candidates in a lot of ways. On the other hand, Oz is untested. We don't know where he'll actually go. But I think he's a good New Jersey liberal sliding in for all intents and purposes, okay? Now, let's move to Shapiro versus Mastriano. This is a much more interesting race. And when I say interesting, I mean interesting in the sense that Shapiro is hands down a better candidate than Mastriano for a lot of reasons. Number one, he knows how to run a campaign. Mastriano's idea of running a campaign was fasting and running around saying, we will walk as free people. Sounds like a Volksmarch to me. Mastriano is a clear and present danger. He wants to eliminate abortion, would sign anything. He'll say, oh, well, the legislature. No, he'll sign anything that restricts a woman's rights down to no exception for their life. That alone disqualifies him to be a candidate in Pennsylvania. He's not a moderate in any stretch of the imagination. He and his wife wouldn't even attend his own sister's, or I'm sorry, his sister-in-law's, her sister's wedding, even though she'd been divorced many years, because they don't believe a woman can get divorced. Okay? God's eyes, once you're married forever. Maybe you believe that, but that shouldn't be a governmental view. Marriage is a secular contract, last I checked. But that's okay. Hey, right? He's a nut. He believes that a masculine man like him has to emerge from a cave someday to take back control, according to some writings he did. On the other hand, Shapiro is a Democrat, right? And Shapiro would do things that if you are a Republican-leaning person, you might not like. But here's the reality. There's a strongly controlled Republican state legislature here in Pennsylvania. So Shapiro won't be able to do much when he and the legislature can't agree. So much like Tom Wolfe, he'll have his hands tied on many things. Doug Mastriano, on the other hand, anytime the legislature does anything extreme, he will sign it. And anytime that he wants to get away with anything extreme, he will use his powers over the administrative agencies, and he'll have to go to court, etc. So Doug Mastriano is a clear and present danger. And on that one, I would tell you, if you can't vote for Shapiro, at least don't vote for Doug. Okay, don't vote for dangerous Doug Mastriano. I have on my Facebook wall a lot of people who've said, and I posted a little bit of what they said. I get a lot of private messages from folks who are saying, for the first time in my life, I'm not voting for a Republican, or I'm voting for a Democrat for the first time in my life, or I'm at least not voting for Doug Mastriano. So if you want to vote for Oz and just leave Mastriano blank. Or you can do what I'm doing. I'm going to probably circle Oz and probably circle Shapiro. Probably what I'm going to do. All right. Now let's get a little more local. If you're in the Harrisburg, Cumberland County region, we've got Scott Perry and Shemaine Daniels, traitor versus neophyte. Scott Perry certainly knows the job, but he also thinks that Italian satellites. Now remember this. This guy was telling the president of the United States, whispering in his ear, that Italian satellites were being used to reprogram the voting machines. If that makes sense to you, vote for Scott Perry. If you think that's cuckoo, like bat guano crazy, like phew, off the deep end, vote Shemaine Daniels and send a message that you can't try to overthrow the election, the duly constituted election. Now, of course, I know some of you guys are election conspiracy types. Like Doug Mastriano, who took a bus down there, right? Scott Perry was trying to get President Trump to put some guy in charge of the Justice Department so they could jiggle the legal system. So keep saying you should just write me in for Scott Perry, see, because we're both criminals. He tried to overthrow the country. I stole some money, but I've already done my time. Scott Perry's time's probably yet to come. So now, midterm predictions. Let's go out of the state a little bit here. Herschel Walker, Kerry Lake, New York governor. New York governor, that's going to stay Republican. I'm sorry, it's going to stay Democrat. The Republican's not going to win. They like to make a big news story out of it. Lee Zeldin's too extreme for New York. I'm predicting that one pretty easily, right? Kerry Lake in Arizona. Kerry Lake, by all accounts, was a Buddhist, pro-abortion news media type. But when she decided she wanted to get elected, she knew that the Fox News crowd that she served for so many years was looking for a certain different mindset, and she's run with it. So God bless her. She's like all the other politicians out there, right? But she'll probably run with that because she's trying to get herself onto the ticket. But if you really think she believes what you believe, do a little more research on her. Herschel Walker. He paid for an abortion, drove a girl to an abortion. Who cares? Because he's anti-abortion. Good news. And he may tip the Senate in favor of the Republicans. So probably that people down there in Georgia should vote for him, right? Or they could vote for Warnock, who actually knows a little bit about the job, and is also a leader in the community down there, just as Herschel is. I don't know. I'm not gonna pick sides on that one, except to say that Herschel Walker's probably not fit to serve. He did put a gun to his wife's head, but hey, she's okay with that, I guess. I mean, she's kind of been in some campaign ads, not so happy about it. But hey, he was mentally ill, so it doesn't matter. And then he had a religious reversion, but then of course that happened before he paid for the abortion. But don't let the details disturb you, okay? Anyhow, obviously I'm not a Herschel Walker fan, okay? So what else do we know? Any of the other elections we want to talk about? Blake Masters. A lot of interesting things going on. So here's what I predict. I predict that we still are undercounting the likely voter versus registered voter problem. And so, for instance, I recently talked to an 18-year-old woman who's going to vote for her first time, and she's going to vote straight line Democrat here in Pennsylvania. Mainly because of her feelings on women's issues and women's rights, and feeling that Fetterman and Shapiro better represent a chance for women's rights. Okay. I asked her, "Are your peers going your way?" And she said, "Yes, she thought so based on social media. But as we all know, social media is sort of an echo chamber, so one never knows. The social media you see and the social media I see and social media she sees and he sees are not the same thing, guys. Remember that. Really get your mind wrapped around that. That's why people are so surprised. I don't know anybody. I didn't see any support for. That's because you only see or hear what the algorithm sees you react positively to or you engage with. There's one of you out there who complains about getting my stuff in your feed, but then interacts with it all the time. And I'm like, can you not understand that every time you interact with my material, Facebook sees the interaction as a positive because it's keeping you engaged and on their site. So you're just going to keep seeing my stuff. So the more you interact, the more of me you get. Remember that. So don't forget to share or like and tag friends in this video if you want to share the voter guide with them. But back to what I'm going to see for the long-term trends, bigger trends. I think we're undercounting that. So I think the Republicans are still going to take the House, but particularly in states where abortion is an issue on the ballot, the Democrats are going to outperform their expectations. And I think the Senate will still tip to the Democratic or to a tie. I don't think the Republicans are going to have quite enough because I think, again, we're undercounting the effects of the abortion question and a few other underlying new voter positions that are out there. But we're going to find out on Tuesday. I'm going to run some special coverage Tuesday evening. So maybe we'll do some chats or do some other things, get some things blowing up on Facebook and Twitter if we can. If Twitter is even still around on Tuesday, who knows? Maybe they'll fire the other half of the employees. Good news is I'm going to get one of those blue checks because it's only going to cost me $8.99 a month. And then I'm going to be, just like President Trump. Well, he doesn't have a blue check yet, but he might get his blue check back, right? All right, guys, thank you for listening. That's been my voter guide. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments section and I will try to answer them. I'll go back a little later here and answer them in not real time. And again, I will see you soon. See you Tuesday at the latest.